Audio. All right, here we go. Let me just get everything set up real quick. Wait for this to actually load. Dismiss. Pre-muted. Live. Live. Make sure both are synced. No lag. And are you going to work? Epic Pen is going to work. Okay. Uh, check. Someone actually texted me for once. That's rare. But okay. Let's see. Nihilists, be warned. There are actually quite a lot of positive things happening worldwide, and here on this channel, in this house, we actually do speak about them. This is a doomer-free zone, and that repulsed quite a few people. Last time when I covered a lot of positive stuff, the audience count dropped by half within like a minute. So be forewarned. Let's see, we'll do some of the smaller stuff while we wait for people to show up, or not necessarily smaller stuff, just stuff that's not part of the title. Why is my screen dimming? It's dimming as if I'm not plugged in, but I am plugged in. It better not be false registering, but I'm going to be getting a new laptop soon once I pass the affordability threshold for it, since it's been about 4 years, and because of the whole partial helium disruption that's taken a bit for Algeria to ramp up to fill some of the gap of. That's constraining a few things related to electronics manufacturing, and also since the whole Taiwan invasion is coming either all of this year or next year, whenever that happens, that's going to be a abrupt, prolonged cutoff, regardless of how short the conflict lasts. So, since it's been about 4 years since I got this one anyways, I'm going to preemptively be getting a new laptop soon. Hopefully, I should be able to afford to order it next month. But okay, let's see. What do we have? What do we have here? Partially related to the title stuff, but technically like a side show thing. The Houthis have kind of fallen down into being just a sideshow. They announced a few weeks back that they would be joining the fight, and I thought since the larger part of their missile and drone supply had already been used in the previous war a couple of years back, and other parts had been destroyed during the bombing campaigns, that they, I expected they did not have a lot left, and I was correct about that, but I kind of thought they would want to be, smarter, and like they'd go for a bigger impact, like using their remaining supply to attack Saudi oil infrastructure, but they decided nah, and to just go balling. And so they've launched a grand total of 3 missiles, and they just launched them at random neighborhoods in southern Israel. So not really the most effective choice they could have made, like making an impact. Could have also, like targeted ships transiting the Red Sea to try to do another uh, traffic stall like they did a couple of years ago, but nah, they just launched at a few random towns in the southern Israeli desert. So whoever is making their strategic calls is clearly not the same person from a few years ago. Whoever that might have been, I don't know if they're dead or if they just got replaced. Let's see. I should check chat more frequently, like a responsible person. There we go. We got 2 people already. Oh, and thank you to Brandon. I think it's Wash. It might be Walsh, but I think it's just Wash with no L. They're the first person who actually joined the YouTube membership button thing on the channel. That's different from the super chat button. It's like a a monthly pay thing. It's basically Patreon, except it's just directly through YouTube. Since YouTube a couple years ago started that because so many YouTubers have Patreons, and YouTube figured that they should provide their own direct version of that so that they, if people were going to be like doing stuff like that, so that they, instead of Patreon, could be the ones taking like a 15% cut off the top of it. Let's see. A few other things before we jump in to title stuff, once we give time for a few people to show up. Peru axed, no, we're supposed to be on marker, not highlighter. Peru axed permission for the startup of a fresh copper mine. Not the wisest decision, kind of making dumb choices like Chile to the south of them is. So big copper region of the world is now like collectively not really being intelligent. But as I've said before, by the Maxogear measurement standard, pretty much all countries collectively or their governments, mix of the country itself plus and or government, basically all countries have sub-zero IQ. There's only like 10, maybe a dozen that actually have an IQ level above zero. Some of them even I would grant above like 5. And I pointed out before, or I've identified 2 so far. I'm gradually revealing them for everybody who's been waiting. Norway is one of the only ones, and one of the only other moderately intelligent countries I revealed a few streams ago is Japan. And the modern incarnation of them for the last 20, 25 years, maybe 30. Their track record started in the 90s, basically. I'll go ahead and reveal number 3 is Vietnam. Government-wise and collective national decision-making wise, is one of the is the third member of the only 10 or 12 countries on Earth that have an IQ level above 0. All right, let's see. How many we got? 9? All right, that's probably close enough. Okay, so we'll start with the main slew of things. So Pakistan, that's where the attempted negotiations happened. Nothing actually came out of it. However, there's going to be another round sometime this week. So there was no actual deal, although the ceasefire is still holding. After the IDF like restrained themselves, because the first 2 days they couldn't keep themselves from bombing apartment buildings in Beirut. But since then, everyone's actually been chilling for the last 4 days or so. No one's actually done anything. However, as a pressure means, the U.S. is now trying an awkward Uno reverse card that it just you don't get the same. You really don't get the same public value out of it when, or the same leverage when, like the shipping industry is already kind of fear frozen anyways. But the U.S. is now blockading the straits as well, although Iran had stopped actually blockading it. But most of the, or not that they were blockading it to begin with, they had attacked like random tankers here and there over the course of the first month. But once we hit about April, they said that no more ships were going to be attacked and that everyone could come and go as they please. But the shipping industry still did not move or barely moved any of their vessels because their insurance companies wanted to, because of just the potential risk, even if Iran said they were stopping and they did hold to their word, they did stop attacking ships. The insurance companies for the shipping industry still wanted to charge the shipping industry 5 times the normal insurance premiums for their vessels that go through the strait. So the shipping industry, the various shipping companies, destruction of the global economy regardless, uh, decided to still just wait through everything because they just don't want to pay 5 times the insurance premium, which they absolutely could without that much actual financial trouble. It wouldn't like suddenly bankrupt them. Uh, but over the last week or so, last week and a half, just before and up to now through the ceasefire, ships had started actually going to and from again, just not in very large numbers. The last 24 hours was the largest amount, and I should specify the U.S. is specifically blocking any tankers going to or from Iran, not just in general. And the tankers coming from Iran or attempting to go into dock in Iran have all obeyed and turned around. None of them have like tried to run through the line of destroyers or anything. But ships coming to or from elsewhere have actually gotten up to uh, between 17 and 20 in one day over the last 24 hours. There's some discrepancy because most vessels are like doing some hijinks with their GPS signals to make sure that just in case like any rogue elements in Iran suddenly decide to like launch some Shahid drones that it will they won't be able to like pinpoint where a ship is and exactly what direction it's going in. So that's also why if you look at like a marine traffic tracking website right now, you will literally see some ships like shown on the map as being at anchor, quote unquote, in the middle, like in the middle of Dubai, in the middle of the desert somehow. That's because basically every ship in and around the Strait and the Persian Gulf is all like scrambling their GPS signals. They come back to normal once they're like past the Strait area, or if they're heading out once they're like out. And so that's how you have to actually measure it. You can't really trust anything in the immediate Strait zone because everybody's doing scrambler nonsense for just as an extra precaution. So for regards to the actual flow situation, pre-war it was 17 million barrels per day left through the Strait of Hormuz. It crashed down to, or sorry, the initial deficit. The initial deficit was because of Iran and moderate UAE exports was about 14 and a half. However, the deficit has since shrunk, said previously on prior streams, because of the Saudi pipeline. One of the very few intelligent things that Saudi Arabia has ever built. Nowadays, they don't do such things anymore. They're focused on building the line. And now in Riyadh, they're building the cube. And someone predicted it that they would move on to octagons. They are actually. They're now building the octagon. It's a giant stop sign shaped floating city they want to build that's like each side is like 10 kilometers or something, and it's composed of smaller octagons that all fit together. So they keep starting and abandoning different absurd, ridiculous mega projects because they want to spend $1 trillion at a time on something. But anyways, back in the olden days, they made intelligent decisions, like building this pipeline that can handle 7 million barrels per day and ship it out to the Red Sea coast and get it exported from there. It was already doing one before the war, so that's six additional, which thus brings the actual deficits down to 8.5. Iran was exporting their exports, even before the U.S. blockade started 24 hours ago, had dropped as their domestic oil consumption started going back up once the ceasefire began and the bombing stopped and things started happening like within the country again. People started actually like driving around and doing stuff. So their exports had dropped from 2.5 down to 2 million barrels per day. So that would have already been 9, but now that the U.S. is blocking that remaining 2 million of exports from Iran, that technically puts the deficit back up to 11. And so Trump did 9/11, I guess. And let's see. The UAE redirected what oil it could out through its Fujairah ports on the Gulf of Oman. They were already usually pumping out about 500,000 through that, and it maxes out at 1.5. So that brings deficit back down to 10. And with the vessels, the amount and degree of vessels that are being allowed to leave, and the amount of oil that is getting out through them, that amount adds up to about 2 million barrels per day, roughly, most of which is coming at this point from Iraq and Kuwait. So that brings the current deficit to 8 million barrels per day cutoff. If it were not for the U.S. blockade to put negotiating pressure on Iran, the deficit would technically only then be at 6 million barrels per day. But also, the effective deficit is lower than that, though. The effective deficit, okay, take my words carefully here. Listen to what I'm saying. The effective deficit is about 4 million barrels per day because this is regarding oil being shipped out, exported to the outside world. And a lot of demand destruction, collapsed domestic consumption levels has happened in all the countries within the Middle East because of the war going on. In the outside world, though, the seemingly like solidified demand destruction as of the moment is about 2 million barrels per day. And it is continuing to go down further. It's looking like by the end of April, it might solidify more around 3, unless prices come back down, prices suddenly collapse. But so the effective deficit is at 4, or sorry, the effective deficit would be at 4 if it were not for the blockade going on. So the effective deficit is actually still up at 6. Okay, so that's the whole Menangled current math of the supply situation. And as expected, in the official announcement about the different points of agreement and contention, the U.S. did officially announce, as I thought, that they have dropped the no more missiles demands, because almost certainly pushed on or advocated for by Israel. That was one of the like demands on Iran is you can't make missiles anymore. Not just the don't ever make nukes, but also just regular missiles, the regular ballistic and cruise missiles. Uh, Initially, you can't do that, make any of those anymore. That was part of the demands. The U.S. has, as of yesterday, dropped that, which or has officially acknowledged that it dropped that. It was kind of obvious that it was going to drop that from the start, but it's now officially dropped that, and that is causing contention between the current U.S. and Israeli governments because the Israeli government does not want to settle for anything other than maximalist demands against Iran, and has publicly Netanyahu's publicly said, anyways, that he wants it's in his and thus Israel's better interest if Iran collapses into a failed state. But basically, nobody else actually wants an Iran population sized failed state. Smaller failed states like Syria and Libya with much smaller populations and not really any kind of like military capacity beforehand that could be absconded with by different parties. That was like kind of allowable. Not that the broader decision makers around the world really wanted either of those to happen in that way, but those were absorbable. Iran doing the same thing would is not in anyone's actual interest. It's not even in Israel's interest. But in Netanyahu's current mentality, from his point of view, it's in Israel's interest. But realistically, it's not even in Israel's interest either. So another meeting is coming later this week, and we'll see what comes out of that one. But the U.S. has now officially, vocally said they're not asking for the no more missiles thing ever. They're not asking for that anymore. And Iran has already, even before those negotiations happen, Iran already conceded to and said they'll let U.S. and other outside oil industries in to operate the Iranian oil and gas infrastructure. So the two things of contention are that at the moment the U.S. is supposedly still asking that Iran do nothing nuclear at all. Sorry, that's more like a V. Let me do a proper U. Nothing nuclear at all, not even regular like power reactors. Uh, Iran Iran says no and says that they'll agree to never doing a weapon and have actually they will agree to have outside observation come in constantly to like look and see what they're actually doing. But they will not agree to like just no nuclear anything at all. And also, obviously, the other major point of contention is that despite Trump's random tweets, sometimes accepting it and sometimes not, it is an absolute solidified position from literally everyone, not just the US, but literally everyone, that no one's actually on board for the whole Iran gets to charge $2 million a ship transit fee thing. But Iran is insisting on sticking on that one because they want to get extra financial recovery for repairing like all the damage and stuff that's been done. And or although they did offer the alternative that the U.S. can and or Israel or the Gulf states can just pay them some large amount of reparations money. But neither of those are, as of the moment, on the acceptability table from the U.S.'s end. Let's see. Oh man, I did not write these notes in an organized manner. But I'm the one who has to suffer from that. In terms of totality of things, within Iran, the damage was basically their navy and air force, which were of questionable operability to begin with, were wiped out. They expended about half of their missile inventory. Uh, 90% was actually like launched successfully at different targets. Only about 10% was actually destroyed on the ground by airstrikes. But they expended about one half of their missile inventory before the ceasefire, and only about somewhere between 1/6 and 1/14th of their Shahed drone inventory. The Shahed drone number is the one that everyone's intelligence agencies were way less certain about, because those are smaller and obviously a lot easier to conceal and ship around. So those are less countable, but the various factories for making the missiles and drones and different components of such have been destroyed by a targeted carpet bombing, basically. Huge runs of the upper echelon of generals were wiped out, and hold on, what else. I forgot what else of like material, material strategic value in terms of dead numbers, roughly around 8K in reality. Iran claims that it's only around 3,000 and that they were all civilians and that the US magically didn't get any military kills on them somehow. The US and Israel, on the other hand, claim that it's around 20,000 and that they were all military kills only and that they didn't kill any civilians as collateral. In reality, most likely number has been coming in around 8K, and it's a bit off from half and half. It's about 4,500 military and about 3,500 civilian deaths, and somewhere around 25 plus thousand people that have been like severely injured and hospitalized to some extent. And obviously, then thousands and thousands more that have been minorly injured to some degree, but something like 25,000 that have been like badly injured or harmed in some way, potentially, I don't know, amputated or disfigured or made crippled or will have difficulty like working for the rest of their life or whatever. So that's the slew of stuff specifically regarding to Iran. Then we got to jump over to the Lebanon stuff. We're gonna we're gonna both loop. Oh, okay, mentality. Sorry, I'm getting old. I'm 32. I'm 32.5, so my brain is starting to break. I thought that said mentally. We're going to both lose mentally. Everybody loses mentally, but uh, it's more than just the line. Literally everything there is a waste of money. The cube is also a waste of money. I promise you, the octagon is also a waste of money. But okay, there was nothing. These two are both synced. Everything's the same. Okay. It doesn't look like there's anything specifically I need to address then. As per the ceasefire, or the part of it that Iran demanded at least be adhered to, the IDF has stopped for the last 4 days at least, has stopped bombing Beirut. The ground invasion is still ongoing, and all kinds of infantry and vehicle combat is currently happening throughout locations across southern Lebanon. But the bombing has stopped. But as of the stopping, we're at roughly 2,100 random Lebanese civilians that have been killed, most of them from, collapsed and leveled apartment buildings across Beirut. Uh, at a decently high Hezbollah death count, put an HZ there, about 1.4K, about 1,400. And the Hezbollah members are also part of Lebanon's population, so that does add on to the whole subtraction calculus. And also, where was it? Roughly 7K people in, again, predominantly Beirut have been horrifically injured to some extent and have required some degree of hospitalization. So that's, apart from the number of dead people and the number of people, as is part of the IDF strategy, continuing to flee from Lebanon permanently, that's also a growing number of people that are going to either be unable to work from now on and thus lowering Lebanon's financial productivity, or uh, are going to require some kind of government assistance, which is going to draw down also on a second level from Lebanon's financial productivity. And everything just stacks on to the overall Israeli strategic goal, which is induced unlivability, just like Gaza, just like the West Bank, and just like they were letting happen in Syria before the actual fall of Assad. Syria was doing what Israeli strategic decision makers would have wanted to do. Syria was doing it to itself. It was doing their job for them. So that's why they didn't do anything directly. Now, apart from just the whole incursion thing and occupying this extra zone now, at some point soon, they're probably going to start doing stuff in Syria to try to restore the induced unlivability conditions. But Lebanon, technically, they've been doing this since the 2006 war, but everything has been drastically hammed up to extremes since the October 7 attacks. So Lebanon, like I said before, peaked in population around 8.5 million, I think. It might have been 9 around the year 2000. Then, ever since the 2006 war, they've been going down and are now down under 5.7 million as the start of this year. So it's a combination of young people are, as soon as they get the opportunity, are leaving because of the induced unlivability, and everyone's having less kids because of the induced unlivability. Lebanon's fertility rate is down to 1.6. So that's part of the overall goal of the desired outcome of the induced unlivability perpetualness is that the population of the subjected area, be it Lebanon, West Bank, Gaza, Syria, etc., the population stops growing and actually decreases by some substantial amount over time, lessening the amount of people that, in Lebanon's case, can be recruited by Hezbollah, both from lesser numbers altogether and from the fact that most of the people leaving are young, and thus the only people eventually left to recruit from would be 70-year-old grandpas who would be effectively useless. And also, Lebanon's economic productivity goes down, and thus Lebanon as a state, if it ever uh, turned antagonistic towards Israel again, could not really afford to actually do that much because it would not it will no longer have the finances to. It already is at the point where it doesn't. But this is a similar goal being pursued all around. That's the desired outcome of the whole induced unlivability strategy. And like I said, eventually, however soon or far off, they're gonna start doing something of a similar sort in Syria. Some reason will be given as for why some round of perpetual bombing has to start. Again, however soon or however far off, I don't know, but they're eventually going to start doing something because Syria is economically recovering from the civil war rather rapidly, and to to a lot of Europeans' delight, supposedly at least, uh, many Syrians are actually returning home. That's where Syria's sudden population surge has come from. As if you look at a lot of their charts, they were like meekly climbing back up through the early 2020s because they got up to like they got up close to 20 million before the Civil War started. They collapsed down to like 15 or 16 and stayed there throughout the 2010s. Then they started meekly growing throughout the 2020s up until now. And then over the last year and a few months since the fall of Assad, they suddenly jumped up to like over 25 million. That's because over, I think it was something like 1.6 million have returned home after being out, after having fled and been being out for so long. So they're going to want to put a stop to that because they don't want Syria potentially becoming too large of a recruitment source and or also becoming too powerful as a state for their liking. So, excuse me, I said to stop. So they are going to eventually start doing something with that. Let's check. Nothing new. Nothing new. Everyone suddenly started heading out. All right. What else did we have here? We got those. We got those. We did that. Uh, oh, and speaking of Syria, actually, although it might not be a thing that lasts very long if Israel decides to start uh, uh, going after Syria soon. But an old pipeline that was dilapidated has been repaired by Syria and will be taking some Iraqi crude out for exports on the Mediterranean coast. Not that much. It's not a very large capacity pipeline, but it is taking about 120,000 barrels per day. So it will, from this port, it will be filling up, and you'll see one tanker heading out every 10 or 9 days or so if they use the smaller 1 million barrel holding tankers. If they use the larger, like 2 million barrel tankers, then it's going to be one every like 18 days or so. Okay, so now we have Cuba, who, if you guys remember, has been on a oil and fuel delivery blockade by the US for the last few months, as most of Cuba's power plants are either diesel plants or oil fired. So, gradually, apart from cars ceasing to be in the streets and people being not really able to go anywhere that they can't get to easily on foot, uh, the entire island has now cascaded into a full national grid collapse blackout and has been in such a state for the last like 2 weeks plus, uh, to the point where now starting to see a huge uptick in hospital deaths because they can't really operate a lot of stuff because they also ran out of their backup generator fuel. Uh, and this is induced unlivability, induced buckling as a means of demonic leverage, basically to get Cuba to concede to whatever these supposed terms are. And as of either today or yesterday, they already had said things previously, but they made like their most recent statement within the last 24 hours or so, and that is that they are willing to concede on most demands that they assume the US intends to make. So they are willing to kick Russia and China out and cease like ties and dealings with them, and they're willing to drop the U.S. Guantanamo issue and are willing to completely open up and let U.S. businesses and business interests even do whatever. Basically, the they said as of their most recent official statement that the only thing they draw a line on is actual governmental or leadership change. So they are preemptively now putting themselves forward as uh, basically a already in place version of the current president of Venezuela, formerly vice president, to where as long as they get to stay in power, they're saying they're willing to literally do anything else that is asked, as long as it doesn't involve them getting removed from power. So, high likelihood that said deal will probably be taken because current administration in the U.S. is going to want like a much easier, and especially with Trump's like weird, weird, uh, like afraid of not getting into heaven obsession with being like recognized as a quote unquote peacemaker. He's definitely probably going to want to take that deal with like no actual fighting after doing all of this. Oh, and also, if anyone didn't know, I'm not actually showing the image because it's blasphemy. Uh, Trump reached like a new level of narcissistic egoism, super blasphemy. So he posted a AI generated image of himself as Jesus, uh, descending from heaven and like raising with like divine glowing powers, like resurrecting a dead guy. So this is a new level of super blasphemy that he had not yet previously reached in the minds of most people. Uh, most people like my dad who are like in Trump's cults, only watch Fox or whatever. So they watch curated news that deliberately avoids anything that would make him look bad. And so thus my dad's probably unaware of the previous stuff he's done, like the whole thing where he was like, I'm like the king of Israel, I'm like the second coming. And the part where he raised his hands up to heaven and shouted at God that he was the divine chosen one. So either everyone has remained ignorant of that or just forgot about it. But this one actually started to turn a few people against him. A few. Just a few, though. Okay, that is what's happening with that. Let's see. Oil prices. The market price, put M for market, which again is just the gambling price, the speculation price, has collapsed down to $91 a barrel because the investors are stupid people. Uh, the physical actual price of oil, the real price of oil that is actually being paid by countries and companies that are actually ordering oil and receiving it has gone back up a bit to $149 a barrel, not the highest. Remember, the highest was 173 about 2 or 3 weeks into the conflict when the deficit was still at its highest. But it had dropped back down to around 140 and even crept down into like the mid 130s until the announcement that Trump was going to start blockading the Iranian oil, which is half of the oil that's actually making it out of the Persian Gulf, not accounting for the whole Saudi pipeline thing, but in terms of oil that's actually flowing through tankers out through the Gulf, it's 2 million elsewise and 2 million Iranian. Once Trump said that, then the physical price started going back up. The market price didn't. The market price kept going down uh, because the market is brilliant. And now that Trump's actually doing it, the physical price is starting to jump. Almost back up to 150. And if this continues, we'll see. Does it get up to the high 173 again? Does it break it? Who knows? In terms of fuel prices in the US, down here in South Carolina, where I've been living in exile, for anyone who's new or unfamiliar, I was living in a wonderful place called Fairbanks, Alaska, and then 2020 happened, and I was never able to return to my job after that. So went from 13K a year down to, in my first year down here, only 1,200 in that one year. Really slowly been creeping back up as stuff on mainly the channel has increased. In total, from everything, from every angle combined, including in-person cash payments from doing other stuff like doing work for some of my parents' neighbors. In total, last year, I got all the way back up to earning just over 4,500. But to ever really be able to see home again, I'd have to be getting at least 8K a year consistently. But anyways, I've been in exile down here and in the general area around where my parents live. Before the war started, I'll show these again. Before the war started, this was on February 28th, when just as we left to go up to see my uncle in West Virginia, it was around 250, and then as of last week, middle of last week, it was around 3.99 or basically $4 flat. And a lot of the stations have been keeping it under for psychological benefits, and they've been compensating by just pushing the diesel price up higher. And I've continued looking around every few days when I either go walking out or we go off to the store. None of the stations have yet dared to be the first one to actually go over four, to actually put a four as the first, as the dollar number. None of them have actually been brave enough to do that yet. They're still holding on, and they're still compensating by just pushing up the diesel prices. As you can see, a lot of them are close to $6 for diesel. And some of the stations might secretly be above 4, but they're not putting it on the sign because some of them that have not these ones where it's kind of locked in on a digital system, but some of the ones that have the physically adjustable signs have pulled a trick to where they'll have it where it's like 3.99 or 3.89 listed as the price, but then there's an extra little like add-on that they put next to it at the end, like hanging off, that says with membership card. So if you know, get into their membership card and thus, give them legal permission to sell all of your data to giant AI companies or whatever, which they're already doing illegally anyways. But I mean, technically, anyone can technically sue them. But if you have the membership card, you have legally forfeited that right. Uh, so a lot of them have started switching over to, saying like 3.99, 3.89 for members. So if you're not a member and you go into those stations, they've probably uh, put the actual price over $4 by now. But so far, no one for the front-facing actual regular price for no one has willingly switched over to display it as over $4 yet. Some of them probably is, but they're getting around it, getting around the psychological shock that would be to the customers by switching out the signage for to keep it looking under $4, but with the caveats added on that most people will ignore while they're pulling in or driving, that it's only still under 4 with a membership card. For the ones that have most likely gone above 4, a lot of them are still actually under 4 with the regular price still. So no one in this area has yet dared to actually be the first one to put a 4 on the publicly visible sign. But that's almost certainly coming soon. Okay, now let me check through. uh oh no, I wouldn't be going back up home to like try to get a specific position. I mean, if I hit 8K or higher per year from doing this, I would just keep doing this. Like back up home, I did a half-baked semi-security thing for the university. We weren't like real security guards. We kind of just sat there in assigned buildings and checked IDs when it was demanded, and our actual provision, like what we were there to do, was to hit like the red X button on the phones that had it, that summons the cops. Or if it wasn't one of the special phones, then to just pick up the phone and hit 4772 and just leave the phone off the hook. Which on the university, that was a special like intra intra university phone network auto summon number. At the time, it got changed occasionally, so it would probably be a different one now. But while I was working there, on the phones that did not have the red X for automatic hop summoning, you pick up the phone and just quickly hit 4772 and just leave the phone off the hook. And that would be instead of like calling, it was a more covert, it would still function as a more covert way to do it. because no noise would come out of the phone, and it would just on like a board. It's broken. We have to fix it. Do that. Do that. Do that. Do that. There we go. And at the university PD station, on like a board that had a map of the university, a light would start blinking, and there'd be from the speaker like a little alert would sound for them, and it would show a blinking light on where the alert was being had been called in from. So that was uh, that was what we were actually that was the only thing we like actually could do, because like I said, we weren't real security, and most of us were just students anyways. There were there were no weapons, there were no uniforms. So I mean, if someone, like people did a few times while I was at the position, if someone like started doing something, the best we were supposed to do was delay, keep them, delay them somehow from hurting anybody else by uh, either getting ourselves harmed or killed. Because if they had any kind of weapon, we were just screwed. We didn't have anything unless we brought something of our own, which we weren't supposed to, but a lot of us did. Not and Before someone takes that the wrong way, I'm not talking about guns. Nobody actually had one, even that was their own. Those were taken from you when you like entered university grounds. But a lot, it was, a lot of people in Alaska also uh, have various types of large knives and cutting instruments that could easily just be kept in a backpack. Okay, now we're going to go down through quite a long list of positive developments, both for individual regions and or countries in question and for humanity as a whole. So, the lithium supply issue continues to gradually uh, become lessened and lessened to suspected, now proven large lithium depositions have been identified within the area of central Nigeria, and development deals were just signed by the Nigerian government with a one of the larger Australian mining companies to begin developments of and start mining on those. So one additional supply issue continues to gradually be made less and less of an issue. Ghana, for anyone who's not aware, just randomly, Ghana is one of the few countries you'll find where, as I learned in my gradual quest to start saying actual names of places and pronouncing things correctly, they do not say Ghana. They do not like put emphasis on either of the vowels in the name. Uh, they're really unique in that aspect. They say whenever a Ghanaian, that's what they're called, people, and that's how it's pronounced. Whenever they say Ghana, they just say Ghana, like not that much like oomph or emphasis to it. And they say the middle A is a lot closer to the a in pan. It's a mix between that and the U in like gun. So it's not Ghana, it's just Ghana. And for Ghana, we have quite a few things. Finally, construction is going to begin on a wheat processing plant, as Ghana does grow most of its, it is able to grow most of its own basic cereal food like wheat and stuff. It does have to import some amount, but it does grow a lot of its own. However, it does not have food processing plants. It up until now has constantly had to export its various grains. Wait, why am I putting the volume up? I'm speaking. I'm not listening to anything. Sorry, the AC turned on. I by instinct I reached up to start cranking up the volume so that I could hear over it, but I forgot I'm the one speaking, not the computer. So they've constantly had to export their grains to other countries to have them processed into the different types of like wheat flour and maize meal and stuff, and then get those returned to them. But for their wheat specifically, within a year or two, that's no longer going to be the case, as a Ukrainian company is uh, building them a wheat processing plant. So they will, starting a couple of years from now, once it's finished, they will be able to process their own wheat in country into wheat flour and everything else. So they will no longer be dependent on sending it out elsewhere and having to import the refined actual flour back. Also, additional gold depositions were identified in the same region where most of the others are, around the Ashanti area, and the beginning surface leveling and construction on the mining project for those is about to begin, and wisely, wisely, like many others are starting to do, Ghana has seemingly realized that Australia is the best choice when it comes to countries of the big players of mining industries. So they went with Australian as well. And Ghana currently outputs they mine up between 120 and 140 tons of gold per year. And that will be declining a little bit as current operations deplete further. But when these new projects come online in a few years, they will, even declines accounted for, bump Ghana up to close to around 200 tons per year of gold output, which is obviously well and beyond what the country like needs and uses for itself. So, and also will be coming, at a perfect time for them for getting the financial windfall off of it, since we're in the age of these gold prices. Now seeming like they're going to be sticking around $5,000 an ounce. And in regards to oil, offshore, which is where most of Ghana's stuff is for the moment. There's likely stuff in the Volta region onshore, but that's still has to be explored for. They're doing expanded work at one of their larger fields that should bring them back up to about 220 from the current 180,000 barrels per day. And then that will decline a little bit until late next year, where a large new field will be brought online, or large by the standards of what's previously been found offshore there, that will jump them up actually to about 300,000 barrels per day of oil production, uh, and roughly More than half, probably 60%, will be able to be exported and thus serve as a revenue source, as Ghana's current oil demand is up to around 120,000 barrels per day, and uh, they're not growing too much year by year, but they'll still, by the end of next year, they'll probably be at, like, I don't know, 130, 135 or something. So still over half, probably like 60% of the total 300,000 that they're going to be jumping up to by the end of next year will be able to be exported. So three good things stacked in a row for Ghana specifically. Then hopping up here, we have all the awesome water situation developments for the North African countries. I should check chat again. Actually, I should drink water first. I have not heard anything specific about that. I've also not been really looking for it, so that's not the Nevada stuff is not something I can answer. So North Africa, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. For Morocco, it's usually Maroc, as in basically it's instead of an O for the first vowel, it's an A, and then you just chop off the extra C and the extra O from the end. It's Maroc. And Algeria is Algezer, not Al Jazeera. Everyone immediately, because everyone immediately just jumps to that because they're familiar with the news agency, not Al Jazeera, Al Jazeera. And Tunisia is pretty similar. It's just enunciated a little bit differently. It's just Tunisia. Uh, Maroc was had over the last number of years gradually seen its total national water supply, all of its reservoirs added together collectively, down to only 38%. However, that massive wave of rain over the past month or so was not isolated to just Tunisia. It was across all three in North Africa. And for Morocco, it took them from 38 over the past month back up to 74% full collectively across all their various reservoirs. For Algeria, they went from down close to 30 back up to now around 60% collectively across all of their different reservoirs. And they'll have to act as such for a number of years longer before I will add them to the list officially, because I've seen too many countries like get onto the smart road and then suddenly just veer off a cliff. So, Algezer, you keep this going. I'm going to put you on the countries with an IQ above zero list. They are constructing 6 additional reservoirs to be throughout different areas within the Atlas Mountains to add further capacity to further shore up their water supply against future disruptions, and are building desalination plants at multiple locations, most of which will be done by 2030, to serve as emergency reserve if they have to. They're not switching over like to actually relying on those. They're being built as a precautionary measure for in case they end up being needed. And Tunisia or Tunisia is they at their lowest point 2 years back had gotten down to only 19% of their total national water remaining. Got back up into the 20s, dropped back down to around 21 or 22, got back up into the 30s, and we're looking like that's where they were going to curve off and over this year as we head into the warmer parts. And they were at like 33. But then that massive wave of rain swept across all of North Africa, and they have even received more rain since last week, since the last time I reported on it. And over the past week, they've gone up even further. They had already jumped from 33% up to 57. And now, over the last week, they've gone further from 57 back up to now 68% full collectively across all of their various national reservoirs. And in Egypt or Masr, sorry, Masr or Mizrim, either or Masr or Mizrim is it depends on like which Arabic you're dealing with. In Egypt, apparently it's the A1 Masr, but for them we have the nuclear power plant is progressing and supposedly should be done between 2028 and 2030. Over that course of time is when the reactor should come on, and they should end up with a total net result of 5 gigawatts of perpetual power generation on that stable, instead of different fluctuations like with sunlight or different alterations via different inputs to account for different power demands throughout the day, like natural gas, nuclear, or so they'll be getting 5 gigawatts of constant baseload provision. And some of that because, in the not as hot months and during the nighttime on said not as hot months, uh, power demand could drop pretty low. Not dropping as low, obviously, during other times, but to partially to make sure there's always something there to consume a decent amount of that power if it needs to be drained into something, but also for the sake of building the production plant to begin with, and from Egypt's point of view, just getting another economic boost from something from the global aluminum industry collectively's perspective, diversifying, because now, apart from them wanting to diversify away from China, they also don't view the Persian Gulf as favorably anymore. So a aluminum refinery or smelter plants is being constructed in Egypt. That will be close to and obviously be drawing its power from the nuclear plant. They should both be finished in construction along the same time. And it will have apparently a constant output of about 500,000 tons of refined aluminum per year, with some likely unspecified amount of higher capacity that it can, crank up to if needed, if they need for like a few hours while they dial things down to like drain some power somewhere. That's all the stuff across North Africa. Let me drink some water, and then I will check chat again, I promise. Okay. Nothing else. Nothing on either one. Hey, look, consistent pattern. It's about half again. When you switch over to non-doomer stuff, you drop about 50% of the audience. Oops, no, we're not going there. We're going here. Congo, the smaller, more stable, reliable Congo, not the big, unstable one that's been in a civil war for 50 years. The smaller, stable one who has basically explored everything within their oil bearing territory. The last little untouched portions have been covered, and the stuff that was discovered there has now been cemented in its development plans, and the work is beginning on those. Uncertain whether it's later this year or whether it will be next year, but other stuff that have been found in their last remaining areas is in the process of being brought online. That's why you'll see they've crept back up from around 270 up to now, most recently 307,000 barrels per day. When this other remaining field comes online, as depending on how much background decline takes over between now and then, it should jump them up to around 400,000 barrels per day, from which they will obviously resume declining. And to look at those graphs, and for my usual self plug, if you go in the description of the stream, if you're new here, and if you go under the description of any video I've made in the last 2 years or so, under the PayPal and Patreon links, there is a free access drive folder link. You go here, and there's folders and subfolders full of all kinds of different graphs, covering everything from demand, production, breakdown by type of product and stuff, etc., across all types of things, and even other stuff outside of energy and resources like population graphs. Here, folder for oil production. There's another subfolder for the different production levels of individual US states over time. Congo, despite starting with a C, is at the top because I have to specify with parentheses that it's the smaller Congo. April 11. So this is the most recent one? No. Okay, no, that's still the older one. The most recent one is not, I haven't uploaded the most recent one yet. So the most recent would look like this then. Well, everything's the same except for the newest bar for the latest update at the very edge. Back up over 300,000. And so, like I said, when this largest of the remaining fields that were discovered in like their final areas that they still had to work with comes online either late next year or sometime either late this year or sometime during next year, they should jump up to 400,000 barrels per day, and then they'll continue their decline from that. But yeah, all those graphs of all different types are there 24/7. They're free to access. So I wanted to make sure there's even as even though my graphs don't look as nice as what you'd find on like Bloomberg or the Financial Times or whatever, I want there to be free data, like graphs and stuff available to everybody perpetually, like there used to be, since everyone is now putting everything behind a paywall of different kinds. Okay, let's see, we've got them. What else did we have? Oh, wait, that's not all for North Africa. I totally forgot about Libya. And we have to get Epic Pen back. Yes, I'm well aware about the Somalia stuff. Everybody asks me about it all the time. I'm not I'm not going to make anything specific on it until something actually like happens. Like I have to wait until there are results from the drilling to actually like know anything. Otherwise, I'd literally just be posting like a 5-second video saying they're doing drilling. I have to wait until the campaign is done and they have like results that I can look at. So we can then like do math and figure out how much is going to come from what. So the missing member of North Africa, I forgot because, like I said, the notes on my note page are not really organized. So Libya is increasing its natural gas output as it does have a pipeline up to Europe across the seabed of the Mediterranean, but it's barely used because Libya's never really actually properly produced its natural gas. See, a lot of their stuff, like a lot of the natural gas across many other members of OPEC, minus a few who have a lot of specifically independent gas, like Algeria or Al Jazeera and Qatar over in the Persian Gulf. Uh, a lot of a lot of Libya's is gas that accompanies the oil in the oil fields, and so for that, since most of your infrastructure is for getting the oil, usually a lot of countries or companies will just flare off the gas because they just treat it like a byproduct. Like Saudi Arabia did this for the longest time. Uh, Instead, Libya is now. I'll draw a cap on the fire, like in Survivor. Libya is now putting the capping and capture infrastructure in place to actually produce their natural gas. First bit of which is now online. And so at one particular field, like out here or something, they're now getting 150 million cubic feet per day from that. And they're gradually going to be applying that to their various other fields. And so they'll slowly become a alternative gas supplier to Europe. And let's see. I think the total they most likely could manage as things stand at the moment is probably 4 billion cubic feet per day if they captured absolutely everything. So for the most part, they've been around 1.1 billion cubic feet per day because that's what they need themselves. Uh, they without that they would not be able to generate power at their power plants. Now they're actually going to start trying to capture and produce all the gas so that they can actually sell it. So that would theoretically now have them up at 1.25 billion cubic feet per day. And their maximum capacity is theoretically 4. So that would be, roughly 3 billion cubic feet per day that they could potentially export if they actually get all that together. And I don't know how genuine the goodwill might be, but amongst the division of Libya, stuff seems to be simmering down as the two governments in Tripoli and Benghazi. I'm just going to draw a arch line like that because I can't draw hands. I'm not the artist in the Dream War project. I'm just the creator and the writer. Anya is the artist. Uh, the the two governments have actually agreed on the current structure and layout of things for the rest of the year for the first time ever. So the situation might be getting better and more stable. We'll have to see, but it's enough to where I'm going to put that under the umbrella of good news. And yes, the the exploratory drilling has started offshore of Somalia. As previously, what happened as I covered in the videos in the past was that offshore seismic sounding was conducted, which is where you, whether on the seafloor or the ground onshore, you do you send the pulse waves down and they reflect back differently depending on what they encounter. And you look at that, and we've learned pretty well over the last 150 years how to look at it and figure out what is or isn't a field of oil or gas, or what's just a very loose layer of rock. And different, points of interest were found that's more or less likely will be oil or gas. So now the second process of that occurs is you have to actually drill down into each of the points of interest and find out, we'll draw the layer here, whether it is actually oil and or gas, or whether it's just particularly like loose rock layer that looks like it's a potential reservoir but is not in reality. And another good development is also down here in the Southwest. For a moment, we had a quick scare. It looked like we might have been about to see another Civil War-esque thing. The regional leader here abruptly declared that the Southwest was a separate thing, and said he's not listening to the government anymore, and was like, come and get me. Well, not that many of his guys actually stuck around to protect him, and the ones that did were kind of dealt with by the newly unified Somali military pretty easily. And so that whole sudden, out of left field rebellion kind of just broke apart. And stuff's being just restored to normal there. It wasn't out of normal for more than just like a few days, because that was like one of the quickest epic fails that's ever been seen. So, sudden scare in terms of Somalia's newfound stability has petered out into nothing. And also, I was going to show some stuff. So, you guys remember, if you've seen like some of the pictures from the 90s, 2000s, and even the 2010s, or if you just saw the footage in Black Hawk Down, most of you probably remember uh, Mogadishu, Somalia, basically being a bunch of like tan, a bunch of like tan, stereotypical old Middle Eastern looking buildings with like uh, a rug as a door, and that there's like no lights anywhere, and only the warlords had like cars, and a few people had like dirt bikes and stuff. Well, Somalia, particular Mogadishu, has gone uphill really fast. This is someone took this on takeoff on one of their flights, because there are actual commercial flights into and out of Somalia now. Like when my dad was there as part of one of the various private military corporations, you could not just fly into Somalia during the 2000s and the early 2010s. Like there were chartered flights, there were military flights, but you could not just like go on to like Expedia.com or something and book a flight to Somalia. Let's rotate that. That doesn't look as good, but or it doesn't look that much better, but it's okay. Now there are 7 different daily flights into and out of Somalia. You can, although you need a visa visitation of permission, most likely from your own government, to be allowed to go there, because otherwise they're going to like label you as really suspicious for going there. But you can actually just go to the airlines and book a flight to Somalia. That is now a thing that's a reality. This is Mogadishu. Notice a stark contrast between the dilapidated, like uh, beige clay buildings thing, no electricity anywhere stuff that everyone came to know it of. This is what has happened over just the last few years since the rapid stabilization. You notice a interesting lack of buildings that have no electricity. It has happened that fast. And I think it's down here. This apparently, to even my surprise, this is from Mogadishu, apparently, which was really, really shocking. This has happened quite quickly. So Somalia is very rapidly like reconstituting itself and coming upwards after 30 years of like bleak oblivion. All right, let's see over here. Uh, More good news for Vietnam and for the world as a whole, as uh, the processor manufacturing industry continues to diversify away from Taiwan before the war starts. We've gone since 2020 from 90% of all computer processors being manufactured in Taiwan down to only about 55%. The number is going to continue dropping further. How far down it gets before the war starts depends on when China decides they want to do the invasion. But Samsung has uh, announced they are going to move additional portions of their processor manufacturing over to newly expanding facilities in Vietnam. So that's another few percentage points that will be getting relocated and another money boost for Vietnam, obviously. South Korea, or Hanguk, is. Oh, there's Josh. Don't worry, you're only an hour and a half late. But don't worry, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's see. South Korea, one of the only uh, for a shrinking list though. The anti-nuclear countries list is really shrinking. Thankfully, Germany is still like dead set on it, but South Korea is one of the countries that is actually expanding nuclear power generation since they, you know, now are obviously seeing the LNG cutoff risk. There's also they want to reduce coal usage and want to just have a decent base load. They hold on. Where's the stuff? There it is. Okay, so they are activating their latest reactors coming online, adding 1.3 gigawatts of constant straight line baseload perpetual power generation. And another reactor will be activating later this year at the same power plant, adding another 1.3 gigawatts of perpetual nuclear power. And they have another pair under construction that still have a few years left to go, but each of those is 1.4. So once those are finished, that will be an additional 2.8 gigawatts of nuclear power added. And so they can both reduce the amount of coal they need to use and reduce their dependence on constant LNG shipments, as the LNG either has to come from the US, who has been prioritizing Europe, and also the US has been getting less reliable under current leadership, especially. Well, it's also US domestic gas consumption is increasing while US natural gas output has peaked and is at its plateau in the upper teens mostly. It should be able to hold here for another few years before it actually starts declining. But apart from that, the only other real LNG option is the Middle East, which is, proven to not be the most stable. And Australia does output a lot, but they really seem dead set on constantly signing long-term LNG contracts with China. So, uh, and they also just don't want to burn as much coal anymore. So, uranium, on the other hand, the largest amount of uranium is all packed down there in Australia. And Australia, it's not as constrained as like with the LNG. And Australia can just constantly ship whatever amount to whoever based on whatever orders come in for any additional uranium. And even with the expanding demand now happening, the revised actual reserves or amount of uranium in Australia is actually still measurable in centuries worth of consumption. So uranium is not actually any kind of immediate supply issue. And plus, Australia is, just friendly to begin with, unless you give them a reason not to be. And then coming over here to the US, to South Carolina, the state that I'm in exile in, is finally ceasing to be as stupid as it has been up to this point. I'm not giving undue credit where it is not deserved, but it is starting to make a few wise decisions. Like currently, there's the various, a lot of them coal-fired power plants and older natural gas plants around the state that are slated to be retired because they're like 60 years old, and the plans to replace them and to build additional new capacity for the continually increasing demand have been zero. However, those plans have drastically changed over the last number of months. Finally got confirmation that to compensate for retiring power generation and increasing consumption, a new 2 gigawatt natural gas fired power plant will be built around there, covering the lost production in this area. A new 1.5 gigawatts natural gas fired power plant will be built up in the northwestern portion of the state to handle the increasing demand load up there. And finally, the actual paperwork is being worked out in the state government to just stop whining, pay the money, and resume construction of the nuclear power plant that was being built near Columbia in the middle of the state, which would be 2.5 gigawatts of, constant, perpetual, solid line power generation. So the stupidity in South Carolina in terms of the state's decision making is somewhat reducing. Somewhat. It's going to take a lot of weight for me to actually uh, bring that state IQ number up to zero from the negatives, let alone over zero. But these decisions being inked finally, and on these on at least the two natural gas power plants, the actual project starting now, that is swaying me towards doing it, but still gonna have to prove a bit more before we actually get there. All right, and let's see, one other source of good news that I was going to report on is Mexico, a a new Kia vehicle production plant that I initially talked about construction beginning on in a stream like 2 or 3 years ago, has now its construction is done and it has now begun producing Kia vehicles for the North American market. So that is now up and running and will now be a perpetual income source for Mexico and for the state of Nuevo León, which is where it is. And also, over the past 6 years, Mexico's murder rate has been on a solid downward trend. Was in 2020, in 2019 and 2020, it was roughly 30,000 murders per year over the course of each of those years. Over the last 6 years, it's dropped down to 23,000. So it's actually growing less violence in Mexico over time. No, negative 200 IQ actions from the US government's required. And I think that is it. That looks like everything. Let me give it another rundown. Like I said, my notes are not really organized. Yeah, that looks like that's basically everything. All right. So I'm gonna shut down soon, but I'll wait like a minute or two to see if anybody else has anything to say or ask, or if any super chats or anything come up. Yeah, seawater uranium harvesting is a thing that we can do. It's just a bit expensive. So hold on, let me go. Works better against the beige background. So basically, you set up these things. They're anchored on the seafloor, and they're wavy and fuzzy and bristly. They kind of look like pipe cleaners. And you set them up in shallow water areas where there is a water current that will constantly be flowing over and through them. And they have a special antimony compound or something that attracts uranium ions out of the seawater, because there's actually a larger than people would think amount of naturally occurring uranium just dissolved in the oceans of the world. These attract it out of the water, and then every so often you would have, I call them preemptively, a spool ship. Or sorry, let me draw more like a ship's bow there. You'd have a big spool ship come up that would like grab one of these and reel it in, and then lay like a fresh one down, and those would be taken in, and they'd be all like yellow caked up from absorbing the uranium. Those would be taken to a special facility in a port somewhere, where then the uranium would be extracted out from those and refined into pure uranium, which would then go through the centrifuges and everything. This would be about it was initially 300, then 270, accounting for inflation since then. It's probably back up to like equivalent to about $300 per pound would be the cost of it. Highest uranium's ever been was 140. Current uranium prices are around 100. But it's not, it's basically irrelevant because the cost of uranium itself, the cost of the fuel is like, or sorry, the uranium to make the nuclear fuel rods is like less than 1% of the actual cost factor in nuclear power generation. So that's, doubling or tripling that particular cost is not the same kind of economic thing. It's not even remotely near like a fraction of the same economic inhibitor as like doubling or tripling coal prices or natural gas prices would be. So that is a thing, yes. Uh oh yeah, moving the stuff. Yeah, just make sure you let me know what time and which day on the weekends. Which one it's gonna be. Like I said on Discord, the weekend would be better than Friday, but I if you need it to be Friday, I can still do it on Friday. Probably have to be after I go to the store though. But if it's on the weekend, then I have no form of obligation of any kind, so that'll be fine. All right, we're getting close to 2 hours, and I don't think anything else from anybody's going to show up, but I'll wait a few seconds. Otherwise, that's going to be where the end comes, and we'll wait and see if anything happens with attempted deal or no deal round two later this week. But otherwise, that's going to be it. So I'll see you guys around next time.